It's a good way to introduce the topic tonight, and I've called it Living Beyond the White Male System. Anne Wilson Schaef is a psychologist. She's an elderly woman now, but in her 30s she came up with this phrase, the white male system, back in 1972. And she observed that we have constructed society for men and women of all races based on a set of understandings or beliefs which were constructed by white men successively over the last 400 plus years. And she observed that it becomes a prison for all of us. And there are 4 walls to this prison cell, and I'm going to talk about each of them, and then I'm going to talk about how you live beyond them. The problem in talking about the white male system to a room full of white men is, one, you could, with a few exceptions, we are responsible for any pain you have, is the first thing is that you will go into your mind and to analyse and critique everything I'm saying. Am I right or wrong? And of course, my opinion is worth no more than yours. And so if you don't agree with what I'm saying, that's cool. I'm not trying to tell you what's right or wrong. I'm going to share a bit from my own experience and what I've learned about myself. But the white male system does a critique of everything. So that silence is allowing you just to be, which is very against the run of the white male system. So imagine 4 walls, and the first one is the white male system is all that exists. And that is defined by power, status, and wealth. These 3 values underpin the white male system so comprehensively that everything refers back to them, and if it's not included or does not express those, then it simply doesn't exist. The basic tenet of the white male system is more. Capital M, capital O, capital R, capital E. Growth. It doesn't matter what system you're in. If you're a publicly listed company, that we need more profit for our shareholders. If we're building widgets, we have to build more widgets in a day. If we're a church, we have to have more bums on seats. More. We have to have more. You've got to get another degree or another $1 million. We just got to have more. Do you know, there's a story in the Gospels that appears in Matthew and Mark, and it's the parable of the talents. And we even interpret that as the person who gets rewarded gets more, and that's, I will challenge you, a complete misunderstanding of that passage. Complete misunderstanding. Because that is not the understanding of fruitfulness as it's originally understood. More means I have to get external stuff to secure myself. I remember my brother-in-law talking about how much super he needed while his mother was dying. And I realised it was being fueled by the fear that both he and his wife had that they would die, or that they would not die, they would grow old and not have enough. Fear. More. Need more. And sadly, of course, that means that we can do whatever we like with the planet. There's no sense of stewardship in that, or kinship with anything. It's only a possession to utilise for my advantage. Because power means dominance. There's this little passage in, I think it's Genesis 2, which says dominion over creation. Sadly, that word's awfully like domination. And so we end up seeking to have domination, power and control. And interestingly, you don't have to have wealth. You only have to know someone who has wealth and want to be like them. So you'll elect someone in power who has lots of wealth, because if he's wealthy and he's in power, he'll make you wealthy. Trust me, that's what we do. Here's how it works in the world. When Barack Obama became President of the United States, there were 35 almost entirely men who had half the world's population. And 2 months ago, when Donald Trump became president, in the 8 years that Barack Obama was president, 8 men have half the world's wealth. There are 7.3 billion people on the planet, and there are 8 human beings that have half the world's wealth. And to expand it further, 1% of the world's population has 99% of the world's wealth. And what that means is that there's a model that says the other 99% want to be like that 1% because of that. Because the one who has the wealth makes the biggest noise and says, we are right. Not surprisingly, those 8 men are all white, all male, all Western. There's a saying, we go into the drug and alcohol unit at Hurston Hospital where men are going through detox before they hopefully go into rehab. And these men have reached the bottom of the barrel, and we say, you have an advantage on all the men who are succeeding and have power and wealth, because you know those things don't work. They're yet to find it out. But there's a sign on the wall in there, and it's got a picture of an American Indian, a Native American, and it says underneath it, when the last tree is cut down, the last fish eaten, the last stream poisoned, only then will you realise you cannot eat money. There's a story, and it's such a good story, I'm going to share it with you. You may have heard it, but I've heard it and I love it, so I'm going to share it again. An American investment banker was having a holiday at the pier, and he was standing at the pier of a small Mexican coastal village when a boat appeared with just one fisherman. And he started docking the boat, and the American entrepreneur looked into the boat and saw a few healthy-sized yellowfin tuna in the boat. And the American businessman admired the tuna and said, that's a good catch you got there. And how long did it take you to catch them? Oh, just a couple of hours. The American asked, why didn't he stay out longer and catch more fish? Well, this is enough for me. I can support my family's immediate needs with what I've got here. And the American asked, what do you do with the rest of the day? He said, well, after I sleep in late and I go fishing a little, I play with my children. And maybe I'll have a siesta with my wife, and then I'll go into the village and play guitar with my amigos while I sip a little wine. The American scoffed. That's a wasted life. And he said, no, I have a full and satisfying life. He said, no, you don't understand. If you spent more time fishing, you could spend the proceeds and buy a larger boat. And if you had a larger boat, you could catch even more fish and eventually have a fleet of boats. And then, eventually, with a fleet of boats, you could cut out the middleman and sell straight to the processor. If you made enough money, you could eventually control the entire chain. You could do catch the fish, process the fish and can the fish and distribute them all over the world. You could eventually go then to LA and maybe even New York one day and become the CEO of a publicly listed company. And the Mexican looked puzzled and said, what do I do then? He said, well, that's the best part. That's when you get to sell what you've built. What then? Asked the Mexican. He said, well, that's when you get to go and retire in a small fishing village and sleep in late, fish a little, play with your children, have a siesta with your wife, and play your guitar with your amigos. But you know what? That's not awfully far from the truth. You've got to ask yourself when you're sitting on the Pacific motorway at 6:30 in the morning in a gridlock, why am I doing this? What's it really about? Thomas Merton wrote, if I had a message to my contemporaries, it would be this. Be anything you like. Be madmen, be drunks, be scoundrels of every shape and form, but at all costs avoid one thing. Avoid success. If you are obsessed with success, you will forget to live. If you've learned only how to be a success, your life will have been wasted. Now, that's the first. Well, the second one is innately superior. The second wall of this cell is that the white male system is innately superior to everything else. It's something that's the best. And, of course, that's how we advertise everything. Cleans like no other product. Or no product is better at this than this product. Or this will make you... I was walking through with Ron just a couple of weeks ago, walking through Mount Albany Shopping Village and walking past a sunglass shop, and the advertising, I wish I'd taken a photo of it, but these sunglasses were essentially saying, you know, women will want you if you wear these shades.
Which brand were they?
See, what happens is, because of innately superior, there's a dualism. Dualism basically means that anything that challenges or threatens the superiority of the white male system is wrong, because we're right. So therefore you're wrong. So it's immediately discarded or judged or scapegoated, because it's outside our frame of reference, which locks you in. Because that's it. See, they bounce off each other. You bounce off the walls. You end up going back to the first wall, refers back to the second wall, refers back to the first wall. So you have to conform to the system. You have to look superior. You have to wear the shades. You have to look the part. You have to be the dude. Now, have you ever noticed something? You cannot love perfection. You can't. You can admire it. The only thing I can truly love is brokenness, struggle, failure, suffering, loss. Why? Because empathy and compassion are the engines of love. Why? Because I identify with it, because that's where I live. This is the real me. And when I'm with someone else who's struggling, what happens to me? I hear you. I see you. Yeah, I get what you're saying. There's no performing, no striving. But ironically, this system is set up to isolate ourselves from others. That's why men go to isolation, why they don't want to talk to anyone when they're in pain. Because I'm not superior now. I was retrenched. And I don't know if I'm going to get another job like it. My marriage failed. Well, obviously I'm a tosser. I've got this addiction that I can't talk about and I can't break. And I'm ashamed of it, but I can't let anyone know. Because I'm supposed to be better than that. Because my whatever system tells me I've got the answers. But the irony, of course, is you can't love perfection. We end up wearing a bulletproof vest around our hearts. And sadly, that means relationships are excluded because they're not really important. So what we do is that we stick people who care and love in daycare centres and hospices. And we pay them pittance. And we'll pay the person who moves numbers around lots of money. Now, I'm not suggesting that some people who have a lot of responsibility with numbers aren't worthy of that. But I know that people who are caring for the formation of lives or people who are soon to die are worth a lot more than our society pays them. And of course, you're going to find those places are staffed almost entirely by women. Men don't want to do that kind of work. And then, in my own tradition, we have this word called mission and evangelism. What that means is, superior, we have our version of reality, and it's called this. You know, like Jesus was really lucky because we came along and worked it all out. And all the people before us, they kind of had a bit of a clue, but we had it all right. They had lots of mistakes. And we're going to tell you poor people about our superior knowledge so you can be like us and go to heaven. Because if you don't become like us, you're going to go to hell. Because our God likes us. Because our God is better than your God. You see how this superiority can creep in and fester every aspect of our lives. and therefore you don't learn anything else outside it. I can't be critiqued because I already know I'm right. The third one, Richard Fay says this. There are two ways of being a prophet. One is to tell the enslaved that they can be free. This is the difficult path of Moses. The second is to tell those who think they are free that they are in fact enslaved. That is the far more difficult task of Jesus. It's quite profound when you think about it. The third one. The white male system knows and understands everything. Knows and understands everything. It's superior. It's all that exists because of these three things, and it knows and understands everything. So what happens is people in authority define for everybody else what is in or out, right or wrong, good or bad. And so we now have a situation where any voice except the person in authority is challenged or questioned. No, just believe what I say, and you'll be good, and we'll be right. And so what we end up doing, rather than doing our own journey, is we try to do somebody else's journey because, of course, as I said, you bounce around these boxes. He knows and understands everything, and he looks superior to me, and he's got power, so therefore I have to stay inside the cell and do what he says. Am I making sense? And of course, it's normally him, it's normally a he who's got that power and authority. And if it's different, then it's just lies spread by the media, or it's propaganda by the government, or whatever it is. How do I spend my money? How do I spend my time? If it doesn't work, then obviously I'm not believing enough, or I'm not sacrificing enough, or I'm doing it wrong. So if I read another book, self-help book, if I go on another course, if I pray another prayer, if I do another thing, it'll suddenly click into place. Next week, next year, next whatever, I'll have it all worked out. Have a look at the titles of so many of the books that fuel this. Your Best Life Now, 5 Ways to a Better You, The Secret to Personal Success, blah, 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 blah. Feeding off our insecurity that we aren't superior, that we don't know enough, and we just need to know one more thing. And of course, you could be saying, Richard, you're getting one more thing. And I realise the irony of that. I'm actually trying to undo some of the things that we know that don't really help us. We tend to therefore dismiss anything that we don't know as unimportant or wrong. We protect ourselves from others. There's a real thatness of everything. So instead of the thisness of everything. So for example, if I walked up to John over there and I didn't know him, but I understand and know everything. So he starts talking to me and I go, I know, so your dad died. Yeah, I lost my next door neighbour a couple of years ago. That must have been really hard for you because it was hard for me. He goes, you haven't got a clue. But that's what we can do. Compare ourselves to them. Well, I understand and know, so I must know what it's about. I work him all out based on, you're one of those. You're one of those people who put people in boxes. Now, the real problem here is that certainty is the enemy of all of life. Certainty is the enemy of faith. Certainty is the enemy. Doubt and faith are bedmates. Certainty does not need faith because it knows. You think about this, mystery, wonder. Mystery and wonder, they are not going to operate inside certainty. If I know, I don't go looking, I don't ask another question. I'm going to ask you another question. Think about this. If you can evaluate anything, work something out, then it's just knowledge, it's information, it's facts. And we confuse facts and truth. Truth is transformative. Facts is informative. And so much of what we call truth is just facts. It's just information. Think about your life. If I talked about the topics of love, if I talked about death or suffering, if I talked about sex, if I talked about eternity, do you know these are the topics where we live? These are the topics of our life. And you don't understand or know anything about any of them because I don't. You don't. All your life is hidden in things that you cannot prove. You cannot test or evaluate or measure.
How can you prove that?
I can't. That's the beauty of it. And of course that leads to the fourth one. Logical and rational. And the problem is, for any married man here will know that being logical and rational won't get you very far with your wives. It's very, very little distance. You're not being rational. You're horrible. This is very, very rigid. It's very fixed. It's very set. It can't shift. Another word for the white male system is the addictive system. And the reason it's addictive is because it's very cerebral. It's all stuck up here. And it's very self-referential. So in other words, I hear or see or taste or experience everything, and I refer back to everything I currently know, and if it fits within my framework, inside this box, with these four boundaries, then it's good. I'll include that because I've already included it. And if it fits outside that boundary, it's bad, it's wrong, I exclude it. Because it's wrong. Why? Because of the white male system. Now the problem is if I've excluded the world of emotions, then I've excluded all depth in relationships. There is no intimacy there, and as I just said, all of our life is about essentially knowing and being known. Martin Buber said, all living is meeting. All living is meeting. All living is meeting. I think that's probably why Paul said our life is hid in Christ. It's not something that's immediately obvious. It's an undercurrent that's flowing all the time. Do we notice the river? We're addicted to a way of thinking that really isn't human. It's not compatible with human life. And the problem there is once you create that system, it gives you something very, very powerful. I stay in control if I can play the game. Just hopefully you don't get to 55 and get retrenched and get kicked out of the system, because as soon as you're kicked out of the system, you are inferior. You know you don't understand everything. You know you've lost power, status and wealth. It won't matter what logic and reason you give to it. You're outside the system. If you are told that you have a condition that won't go away, if you have something unwanted in your life that won't shift, no matter what you do, no matter how many times books you read, or how many times you pray, or whatever you try to apply to it, then you'll know that that system is very, very limited. There's a story about a Buddhist monk with his novice, and they're walking down next to this wide river. And the novice says to the monk, "Is the water cold? Is it deep? Is the current fast? Do the fish bite? Will I drown?" And this kept going on for quite a while until eventually the monk said, "Let me answer all your questions," and pushed him in. Nothing, and I mean nothing, will help a man or change inside a man until he loses control. If you're sitting inside this room and thinking, well, someone talked to me about the men's rites of passage, but I really don't know if it's right for me, well, the white male system will tell you, don't do it. You have to be a loony to do it. I will guarantee you now that you will think either when you get on the bus, because we bus you in, you don't drive there, or soon after when you arrive, or before you get on the bus, you'll think, this was the biggest mistake of my life. I'm an idiot. I did. I had a guy, dear brother, who did the rites 2 years ago, and he got to the bus stop, and he went and rang his dad, and his dad was on the tractor and said, because he's saying, I can't do this, I just told my dad I'm not doing it. He'd already paid his money, he wouldn't be refunded. Rings his dad up and goes, I can't do this, Dad. And the dad says, I can't hear what you're saying, I'm on the tractor, I'll call you later, and hung up. So he then rings me up, but I'm already out there, and there's no phone coverage out there, so he just gets my message back. I said, damn it, I'm going to have to do this stupid thing. And of course, around the fire on Friday night, with tears pouring down his cheeks, he goes, this is the best thing I've ever done. His marriage had failed. He'd done the white male system. He'd strangled the white male system. But he knew that it was terrifying to lose control. It is so scary for a man to lose control. But you will not grow or change until you do. You cannot white-knuckle it to the end. The more you try to, the more you will strangle life out of you and everyone around you. So, what happens? Well, I can't tell you, and no one ever will, because it's like watching a football game and you know the outcome. You just fast forward through the boring bits. This is something you need to experience, like that novice being pushed into the river by the monk. You need to be immersed in this, and that's the beauty of it. You can come to counselling for an hour and you'll get some stuff, but when you are immersed in 5 days, something pretty profound can happen. And it's not the normal mountaintop experience where, woo, this is amazing. Normally it's, I don't know what to make of that. I would call the men's rites of passage, the best way I could describe it is a detoxing from the white male system. But once you detox, you spend the rest of your life in recovery. And I'm still in recovery. My name's Richard, and I'm addicted to my mind. It's been 16 minutes since I last referred back to it. It's because I'm talking. Yeah, I said we bust you in. It's one of those transition points where you lose control straight up because you're not, your car is a bloke's possession. And when you get there, the first thing we do is we take your car keys off you, your wallets off you, your phones off you. Phones, you know what a security blanket, a white male system those phones are. And if you want, your watches off you. And it's an extraordinary. Men do spend the first 24 hours going, well, it's really weird.
That's how we pay for the...
That's right, then we go for them.
Still money,
There's no, as I said, there's no signal out there anyway, so those phones are pretty useless. And because logical and rational is one of the walls of this prison, we don't do what I'm doing right now. We don't take notes. Oh, and if you wanted to know, this has been recorded, and I'm also going to put a transcript up on the website so you'll be able to access it from Wednesday, I think. We don't do a whole bunch of teaching. We use silence, like we did earlier, lots more of it. We use nature, we use art, we use music, we use movement, drama, we use poetry. Things that your rational mind kind of can't really get a hold of. But some other part of you down here starts to wake up. And you go, what am I doing with that energy? Where's it coming from? There's a whole part of me I don't even know exists. So we don't do what you'd normally think of because we're trying to, as I said, detox, destabilise the ego is another way we word this. And there's something else that we do that's pretty profound. Because of this fella, the thing this does, or used to do reasonably well, is we debate.
And debate now is reduced to just diatribe, straight out argument. This is what it looks like on Facebook. If you're a conservative voter, then all your news feeds are conservative, all your friends are conservative, and everything you see is conservative, and it's bagging out the other side. And if you're a left-leaning supporter, then the same goes. You're going to get all of the left media and the left opinions, the left friends, and you're going to shout at the other side. So we used to be able to debate, we only seem to argue these days. But you know what we've never learned to do? White male system does not know how to do something ancient that all cultures and all people, most especially men, have known how to do through thousands of years. And it sounds like a word that's too poor. In your thinking, when you hear this word, you won't understand it fully until you've experienced it. And it's dialogue. So we will put you in groups where you will be able to spill your guts and be as vulnerable, because you won't know them and they won't know you, and hey, you may never see them again because they live in Timbuktu. Because people come from all over the place. South Africa, New Zealand, Asia, mostly Australia, but Perth, Adelaide, Tasmania, you name it. And you can spill your guts. And one thing you will never have, well, three things you'll never have in this group is you'll never have a man fix you, you'll never have a man disagree with you, and then you'll never have a man instruct or inform you. Why? Because your experience is your experience. What do you know about your life? You're living it. You'll hear one thing, a man will look you in the eye and go, I hear you. Whatever it is, I hear you. You know, the thing is that men's liberation, why isn't there a women's rites of passage? Men's liberation is a lot harder than women's liberation because of this white male system, because it is prison. And we don't know it. And often we don't know it until we're 65 or 70, and suddenly the only thing we've got left is another cruise and a golf handicap. And even it's slipping because my eyesight's gone or whatever. Some fine motorcycle went, like my dad, who got Parkinson's. We could get to the green in 2, and then 7 putt it. You go, well, that was a waste of time. But that was a humiliation. We are all facing that. Some of us sooner than others. My bald head. Men's liberation is harder than women's. Even if we do recognise it, we often go, well, that's just simply the way the world is, the way life has to be. But there is a way out. A Sufi theologian translated the Gospels from the Aramaic cultural lens, and translated the Beatitude, blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth, this way. Right are those which have made that which is rigid within them soft. Right are those who have made that which is rigid within them soft, for they shall draw life and strength from all creation. They shall draw life and strength from all creation. Because that which is within them is no longer rigid, but now soft. I've got some sleepy looking faces there, some hard-working men that are pretty weary. So I'm going to ask for some questions, feedbacks, anything you want to fire out and go for life.